Welcome to Rubber Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome to the show John DiLeo, who is the author of 7 other books about classic movies, And You Thought You Knew Classic Movies, 100 Great Film Performances You Should Remember, but Probably Don't, Screensavers, 40 Remarkable Movies Awaiting Rediscovery, Tennessee Williams and Company, His Essential Screen Actors, Screensavers Part 2, My Grab Bag of Classic Movies, 10 Movies at a Time, a 350 film journey through Hollywood and America from 1930 to 1970, and There Are No Small Parts, 100 outstanding film performances with screen time of 10 minutes or less. And today we're talking about his latest book, Not Even Nominated, 40 Overlooked Co-stars of Oscar-winning performances. John, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Robert. I'm sorry my titles are so long.
No, not at all. They're great. I mean, they certainly, at least for me, they get you intrigued. Definitely. So, this is the first book of yours I've read, but I certainly want to read the other ones as well. But before we jump into the book, I just wanted to get to know you a bit more. Can you talk about when your love of movies started? I understand your family are big movie buffs as well, and started from childhood. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Nobody in my family was ever in the business at all, so there was none of that it was sort of the family biz, or I was expected to go in a certain way. It was really just fans. 2 of my 4 grandparents were really devout moviegoers, like every week, and long before I came on the scene. But by the time I did, watching those old movies on television in the 60s and 70s, and a grandparent or both my parents, they were also very much into movies, would say, you got to watch this, come sit. And everybody likes something else. So my mother wanted to watch Esther Williams, and my dad, Jimmy Cagney. My grandfather loved Tearjerker. There were so many movies to be exposed to, and I just went for it. And I, as a young person, wanted to act. And so that's how I tried to express my love for all of this, by being a part of it. And I did, I went to Ithaca College as a theater major and did the aspiring actor thing in my 20s and 30s, or mid 30s. And that's when I kind of thought, I think I'm losing the drive and the enthusiasm to keep pushing, and thought, I've got all this movie knowledge in my head, this love that I've been carrying around with me. I wonder if I could actually do something with it. And I started small by writing little matching quizzes that I imagined would be in, Premiere Magazine or something. And a guy who was writing movie books at the time, a guy named Jerry Vermiglia, who I had a lot of his books from the 70s. We had become friends through a theater company, and he said, why don't you make it a book? And I remember laughing in his face, like, Jerry, I'm just some actor who's like looking to do something. I'm not an author. And he said, well, why not? And I thought, oh, okay. And I started having more luck than I was having as an actor. And I thought, I should roll with the whatever you want to call it, roll with the universe, roll with the word yes. And so that was basically a little over 25 years ago. And so you've named what I've been doing in those 25 years, predominantly those books. But the books lead to, you get to do personal appearances, you get to introduce classic movies. The books give you the credentials to do other things that you love. And so interview old-time movie stars. And so it all becomes one big thing. And it all did come out of just loving old movies as a little kid.
Were you writing before your days as an actor, or did it all start once you decided you didn't want to pursue acting anymore?
It kind of started when I wasn't writing at all. No. And in fact, after I did the quiz book, which had writing in it, but basically little introductory sentences, little jokes and things, but I wouldn't call it writing. It certainly wasn't film criticism. The second book, the one you mentioned, 100 Great Film Performances You Should Remember But Probably Don't, was the first time I tried to do film criticism and write essays. And those were short ones, 100 short ones. So that was kind of my way of dipping my toes in the water just to see if I could do it. And I remember sort of realizing that, I wasn't someone in high school that all the teachers were coming up to me and saying, you've got a real gift. You should be writing. You should be writing every day. And I wasn't that guy. I came to it from a different angle, which was my love and passion for this stuff was strong enough that I felt like I had a lot of things I wanted to say, and I just had to figure out the best way to say it so that the audience understood what I meant, why I was saying it. They couldn't misunderstand what I was saying. And so it was kind of on-the-job training. And so I kind of, I always feel like you get better and better with each book because you're just, you're more fluent in how to do it or how you do it,
Well, one thing I really like about your writing is that you make these really great and insightful judgment calls on the performances and particularly the nonverbal moments of like the behavior that you're seeing and things like that. And I thought that when I was reading the book and before I discovered you were an actor, and I thought, I wonder if being an actor actually helped him see those things. I mean, is that the case? Did being an actor help you kind of just be able to pick up on behavior better?
Absolutely. And I thought, people will have said to me, was it painful to give up your dream of being an actor? And I thought it wasn't, because it never really went away. I just did it in a different way. And that's what you described, particularly when I did the Tennessee Williams book. When I was done writing that, I felt like I had played every major Tennessee Williams role you could play, because the gist of the book was to understand what was on the page, what was the actor bringing to it, where did they all go wrong, where did they all go right, where did they surpass what was on the page. And that was all about like picking up a script and trying to figure out, how does this character tick? And so, yes, I think predominantly in the 8 books, if anything, my subject is film acting, not necessarily just movies.
Right.
It's film acting. And because of that background, you're right, it's almost like all those years were preparing me to do what I ended up doing, just not in the way I thought I was going to do it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I and I love Tennessee Williams, so I'll have to read that book as well. It was when I first heard about your book. I'll be honest, I was a little hesitant to read it because I thought, is this going to be a big like Oscar love fest? Because I am not an awards fan, and I was so relieved in your introduction. You write here, competitive awards in the arts are inherently ludicrous. Some might even call them stupid. And I thought, thank God, thank God, because I was a huge Oscars fan for years, and I knew so many winners from every single year. And then you start to see, you start to understand, well, how can there be a best year? Because, they're playing different parts. Who's to say one's better than the other? And something Marlon Brando said, and I'm sure he hated the awards and he turned down the Godfather when the Academy Award when he won. And he said, well, if everyone played Hamlet, then you can maybe say who was the best. But you can't, and that really landed on me, and I was like, yeah, this is all there's something so silly about it. But at the same time, it's interesting that on the one hand, it's great that at least it gets people talking about acting, or so there's and movies and cinematography, editing, all those things. So it at least there's some pluses to it. But I was curious as to it's interesting that you say that it's ludicrous, but yet you have this fascination for it. So I was curious where the fascination comes from for from you.
Well, I think it's like you said, when we're interested in movies and we're younger and we discover the Academy Awards, if we're teenagers, we think of it as, the Bible, the gospel. This is the best. And then whatever age you are, when you start to feel like almost your opinions have now surpassed the Academy, and then you start looking with more of a jaundiced eye. But what I also say in the introduction was, they're impossible to ignore, and so they're this thing that's there, and they do serve the purpose, which again you kind of mentioned too. It's something to react to. So if you're figuring out your whole sensibility of movies, what you love, what you don't love, the Oscars are kind of this thing you can put yourself up against and say, they thought that was good. I don't, and this is why. And so if you love this stuff, like I said, they're a good way to clarify your feelings, your opinions of movies, because like I said, you can hate them, but they're right there. They're approaching 100, and they have that behind them too, just the longevity of just something that won't go away no matter what.
Yeah. No, they won't. And you're right. I mean, it's there, at this time of year, it's in your face everywhere. If you like movies, I mean, people are talking about it endlessly. It's all in the press. It's all over the place, so you're right. I mean, it's absolutely impossible to ignore.
Right. Yeah, it is. And, it's like I said, they're fun. It's fun to talk about when they got it right, when they got it wrong, who never got it, and it's a crime, and it's just like I said, it's just part of the conversation. I've never been willing to give it up completely.
Right. No, and one thing that I really liked in your book is the way in which you look at a winner of an Academy Award. And in many of these instances, how their co-star didn't get a nomination. Just to give one example, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Fredric March and Miriam Hopkins. I was really interested in the fact that you talked about how maybe people are thinking so much about how Fredric March is so terrifying in that and things like that, but that you're, as you put, that may be because look at how scared Miriam Hopkins is. And so it's what she is giving may be making you think that the other person is not that March isn't good in it, but you're right, because I hadn't seen it before, and I really liked it, and I was Miriam Hopkins. I was like, oh my god, I mean, she literally looked absolutely terrified. I mean, it's hard to believe that how she found that. I mean, and as as an actor, I'm sure it's hard to act scared.
Well,
can you talk a little bit just about that part of your book, because I found that really fascinating.
Well, often, like I said in the book, the one who won the Oscar has a showy part. Yeah, obviously playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you have the showiest part in that movie. But sometimes somebody is also in that movie who's just as good, if not better. And it's a movie I've always liked as well. And at some point, I realized, well, what is so scary? What is so powerful about the movie? And sometimes his makeup is kind of ludicrous. We'll go back to that word. It's a little over the top. Yeah. Everybody's wearing a mask. Yeah. And yet it is terrifying. And it's coming from, as you said, her reactions. Right. And it's not just what we see in the scene she's in with him. It's the looks that suggest the things that are happening off screen. Yes, that's true. Between Mr. Hyde that we can't see, that are too horrifying and disgusting to show in a 1931 movie. So the things that are so degrading that he's putting her through, and just one look at every time he enters that apartment that he set her up in, like it's about to begin again. Yeah. And I can't even imagine. And that holds up. That's over 90 years old, that movie. And her performance is that's the movie. It's Miriam Hopkins. So it was lovely for me to then shine that spotlight because, There have been a lot of Oscar books, and I only wanted to do one if I could have my own, I hope, my own special spin on it.
Yeah, no, and you did that really well, and I mean that's to me was the greatest value of the book is, you know, no matter what people feelings about awards or the Oscars, is that you're shining lights on performances that maybe people haven't seen or have forgotten or were overlooked at the time. And you know, like any good film book, you walk away with adding to your Letterboxd D list of movies to check out, because I mean a lot of these I'd seen, but there were a number I hadn't seen, that being one of them. Another one that I loved, that I was bawling my eyes out watching it, was Captain Courageous. Yes. Freddy, Bartholomew, and Spencer Tracy. The you know, there's a connection with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because if you look at it, so much of that film is Bartholomew. But maybe an audience will think it's oh, this is so much of Tracy because of the character is crying about him and how great he is and that kind of stuff. But man, Bartholomew, oh my God, I mean, just the looks on his, you know, there's at one point where Tracy's singing and he's looking at him and he's smiling and he's starting to cry and he's trying to hide it. But you see the smile, and then oh my God, and the way he reacted when he drowned, and then how he broke down and later on in the boat in front of his father, and man, I mean, it's probably one of the best child performances I've seen.
I think it is one of the greatest child performances of all time, and you know, I love Spencer Tracy.
Me too.
Generally, he wins the Oscar for that, but he's miscast, and he's trying, but he's not ideal casting. First of all, second of all, his part is about half the size of Freddy Bartholomew's. It's his story, and yes, maybe you didn't want to nominate. They had nominated Jackie Cooper for Skippy years earlier. For whatever reason, they didn't nominate Freddy for Best Actor, but they didn't even give him one of those juvenile Oscars that were in fashion at that time, which is another head scratcher.
Right.
But also, I mean, it's his story. He changes so much through the course of that movie, from this obnoxious child to this feeling old beyond his years young man. And it's really beautiful and subtle and sophisticated acting. And like you said, when you, spoiler, Spencer Tracy dies in the movie. When you die in the movie and people cry about you, it does give you kind of award sympathy. Like you think you're crying about how moving Spencer Tracy was, but it's really all about how this boy has been so affected by this man, this father figure who is gone, and his, at least for now, that inability to just get past it, although it will help with his own relationship with his own father.
Right.
But it's a really beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I loved actually that performance of Freddy Bartholomew in that movie, and Gene Simmons and Elmer Gantry were the two inspirations for the book. The two performances that gave me the idea, would there be enough, could I, a book length concept where there would be more than two, and then how many could I get out of that idea that I could get excited enough about,
Right. Yeah. Well, that's another, I only just saw that a couple of years ago, and yeah, I agree with you. I mean, she's, Gene Simmons is wonderful. I mean, I love Lancaster as well, but it's hard to believe that she was so overlooked. You wonder, you scratch your head thinking, where did these decisions come from?
And again, I guess, I love Burt Lancaster too, and he deserved to win. But again, I guess people were so excited about that and excited about Shirley Jones, Little Miss Wholesome musical comedy, playing a prostitute, that they forgot that really the most complex performance in the movie is coming from Gene Simmons. And to make matters worse, that's the year Elizabeth Taylor wins for Butterfield 8. And Elizabeth Taylor is really good in that movie. It's just not an award kind of movie. It's, trashy fun, and she's really fun in it. But Simmons is magnificent. Yeah. And she's one of my favorites anyway. And I think that's probably the greatest performance of her life.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Again, that was another inspiration for the book, to really put a spotlight on that. Like, come on, maybe she didn't get an award, but she's getting a chapter in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well earned for sure. And another one that I hadn't seen, and I know that he's a favorite. He was your favorite actor of that period. Is Joel McCrea.
Yeah.
So the merrier. And another example. It's true because I mean Charles Coburn won Best Actor, but he's to me that was I mean he's good in it, but that was so much more of a supporting part.
No, he won a supporting. He
He won supporting.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
But they're all three. Gene Arthur, Joel McCrea, and Coburn are all billed above the title.
Yeah.
And like I said, Coburn wins, and he's wonderful. And Gene Arthur, really, it's her vehicle. She's the biggest star, and she's delightful.
She's amazing.
But Joel McCrea is just as funny as the other two, just in a much more low key, deadpan, under his breath kind of way. But he's terrific, and he always is, in my opinion. Never goes too far, always just right, lands every laugh, lands every emotion, always something going on, always connecting with his acting partners. He's terrific. So I always love any opportunity I get to write about him. And luckily, he's in a movie where someone won an Oscar and he wasn't nominated, so I could write about him again. Right. I love to write about him, and so again, just to even if it's people who already love The More the Merrier, if they look at it again and just appreciate, he is really good. I'm sorry I always take him for granted, like so many other people did. But wow, he's funny.
Yeah, he was, and there's a wonderful scene. It was also quite I found erotically charged, where he's on the stoop with Gene Arthur, and he's seducing her, but she keeps talking about her fiance, and it's it's so daring, but you could see that she's can't help but fall for him, and she's someone else who people are probably maybe not as familiar with today. Of course, we know her from the those great Capra films, but she also as left the business I think just after this, right? Not long after. So I think people are maybe less familiar with her, but she's also like such a good actor that people should know more of.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites too, especially in Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. It's probably my favorite of hers. But yeah, she went away, came back for A Foreign Affair, and then came back for Shane. But then, but anyway, I would have included her if she'd never been nominated in a movie where somebody won, but so not everyone could fit the concept.
Right.
But I was always so excited when someone did. And to that point, two of my favorite inclusions are Myrna Loy in The Best Years of Our Lives. And Edward G. Robinson in Key Largo.
Right.
Because neither of those two stars were ever nominated for an Oscar for anything. So the fact that they could be in a book which is called Not Even Nominated made me very, very happy.
Yeah. I didn't know that, and I was surprised to hear that. I mean, because they're both like, masters of the craft. And this is something, I mean, I kind of always knew, but your book hit it home for me, as well as recently you may have heard of Joseph McBride wrote this book on George Cukor that I interviewed him about, and he was talking that, and you say this as well in a similar way. It's like like Oscars, they often award like the people who do like the quote unquote most acting. They have to do an accent, they have to transform themselves, or and so that really pops. But like the people like Joel McCrea, who where you Cary Grant, where you don't see any acting, they're totally present. For some reason, that just gets like completely overlooked, like, oh, they're just being themselves. And I don't understand. I've never actually, because I've always, I remember because I'm an actor myself, and I remember I initially got attracted to those actors who transformed themselves, and I still am, but I've become more and more interested in the people who do so little, but yet they're actually there's so much happening in their behavior and in their and I'm like, why is this so overlooked? It's it's a mystery.
And it's also those people like Myrna Loy or Joel McCrea, as the decades go on, their work looks timeless. It looks like they did it yesterday. And some of those other people with the makeup and the accents and the wigs and all that, it often doesn't look as good as it looked back then, and you think, ooh, this is a little creaky. And you watch other people, Cary Grant included, of course, of that, and you're just, again, you can't see the acting.
Yeah.
It's just being. And Myrna Loy in The Best Years of Our Lives is so completely that woman. And there's so much going on, and there's so much subtlety, and there's so much range within the movie. Yet it also just looks like she got up in the morning and was that woman.
Yeah. No, it's she's great, and Grant is another one. You look at Philadelphia Story, which is another example you give where Jimmy Stewart wins, and sure, he was great in that, very funny, but he's got a more like drunk scene you bring up.
Yes.
It's a more showier role, but as you write, if you look at Grant, his reactions are so wonderful, and also, as you said, it's more of his story than Stewart's, I would say, as well. I mean, he goes through more things. If that was your impression.
And what he does is flawless. I mean, that is a flawless light comedy performance given by Cary Grant. I mean, he gave many, but that's a good example of one. And the Jimmy Stewart role, like I said, it was the drunk scene that sort of tipped it over. And he's great. I mean, he's great. But it's almost borderline supporting in the sense of where it fits into the story. Cary Grant, again, famously overlooked. The only times he was nominated, the 2 times for 2 dramas that people don't much talk about anymore, Penny Serenade and None But the Lonely Heart. But if you start talking about his comedies that were overlooked for awards, you can, hit number 10 and still be going on about another great comedy he did that he should have been, considered among the best of the year every time. So, yeah.
And as you know, comedy is just always overlooked, like 8% of the time, which to me makes no sense. And it's funny. That's another thing that I've become more and more attracted to are those actors who could do comedy but then do drama like seamlessly. Someone like Jack Lemmon won a couple of Oscars, of course, but I'm just like, there are so many rich, wonderful comic performances, the same with the horror genre, but yet, you talk about Mia Farrow in this also not getting nominated, but yet, why is that? It doesn't make sense. Why does everything have to be so heavy?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I found in the writing, sometimes you could come up with a reason why, like in 1967, I get why Sidney Poitier wasn't nominated that year because he had 3 big movies. He probably got votes for all 3 and not enough for any individual one of them. And so he was overlooked. But then there are some that there really is no reason that you can absorb that makes sense. Like Humphrey Bogart in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Probably one of the, I think I say in the book, 2 or 3 greatest things he ever did in a year that wasn't particularly strong in the best actor race. So this movie that wins director, screenplay, and supporting actor that's up for Best Picture, this great star giving a really risky performance, playing someone unraveling before our eyes unsympathetically. How was this overlooked? And of course, the answer is I have no idea. No one else does either. There's a couple. Donald Sutherland, Ordinary People, is another one. It doesn't make sense. How was he not in the race? And, there's always another thing you hear about snubs. I don't know that I necessarily believe in snubs because there's always number 6. Whenever these cases, Bogart or Sutherland, they were number 6, and for whatever reason, people liked it, but they liked somebody else more, or somebody else was more popular at that particular moment. The ballot came through the door. So it isn't necessarily a snub. It just looks like one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the irony is, that was one of his performances, Bogart, where he was going away from what today people would call like an actor's like, which I'm not a big fan of this word brand because it feels like I'm like toothpaste or something, right. But as like the type of, they were used to his sort of cynical, tough guy who also had a softer side. And yet he goes away from that. And you would think that because that popped more, the way in which people look at it, of course, that he would have got rewarded for it. But it's interesting that he didn't. Yeah.
Exactly. I think maybe it was just too dark. I mean, there's nothing cool about that character, and it is a dark thing. And I think maybe sometimes people, they don't want you to do something that shows how good you are. They want you to stay in your lane.
Possibly, yeah.
And they're a little troubled by because he really goes for it, no holes barred. I mean, he really does it, and he's magnificent again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. And the last one I wanted to touch on, I was so glad that you wrote about John Savage in the Deer Hunter, because he's a phenomenal actor. That he's someone I would imagine people, you hear the name John Savage, you think who, but then you look at his face. Oh yeah, he's been in in so many things. And I think this is one of the films that made, because I know some of the films you write about, it doesn't mean that you were crazy, that you like all the films. This was one of the ones that I got the impression you really didn't like the Deer Hunter, which I don't. I like it a great deal, but I do acknowledge. I mean, I think it does have its share of problems. But that was another thing was interesting about the book. I mean, the things, the performances you wrote about, and the cases you made for, how do these things get overlooked? I completely agree with. But every now and then, when you talk about an actor who's in another film, and then you maybe thought that film was overrated or what have you, I kept thinking, what? So many of them. We'll have to do a part 2 where we just debate some of the things you find overrated. But yeah, I mean, Savage, when he's breaking down before the Russian roulette, that looks like someone literally breaking down. I mean, how he found that in himself. That's not the only thing he does in it. Of course, we see more, but wow. I mean, he really is someone people should, you could study his work. I mean, he's a flawless actor.
I think even when that movie came out, and I remember seeing it, and I think I liked it more then. But I remember, to me, he was the standout at the time, too, and I didn't understand. Because seeing it again and writing about it and watching the scenes intensely and over, he really seems, from beginning to end, the only character I really believe all the way through, moment to moment, connecting all the dots. Everybody else seems somewhat artificial in the way this characters are constructed and the way they behave. And so, I mean, also, when you're writing a book like this, not that it's done on purpose necessarily, but nobody really wants to read a book that's 350 pages of slobbering raves.
Right.
It's kind of nice when you don't love everything and it breaks it up, because that's not the only movie in the book. I hate California Suite. I write about that because I love the Maggie Smith.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, but their story is great. But everything, it's so dull.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
and it was fun to write about Maggie Smith's performance in the VIPs, which I also love, which again sticks out of the movie because she's like a real person going through real things, and you can watch her face change in a scene over and over. And she barely speaks, but you're getting everything. And the rest of it, or most of it, is this, very trashy soap opera.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Believable.
I hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah, it's the Elizabeth Taylor Richard Burton movie right after Cleopatra to cash in on more of that. And
of course.
It did, but it's very schlocky. But Maggie Smith, virtually unknown in America at the time, is really, again, subtle in a movie where you're not expecting subtlety, and actually being quite touching, playing a cliche role of the sort of mousy secretary pining for the handsome boss. That's her plot line. Good luck with that. But she actually makes something really, really special from it. So it's, like I said, it's fun to have a range of feeling about the movies you're writing about. But also, in a book that size, Robert, you couldn't possibly agree with me on everything.
No, of course, right.
My mother wouldn't agree with me on everything. So, and that's the fun of the Oscars themselves. Like I said, the arguing, wait, if you thought that and I don't, why don't I? And what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And let's talk about that, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's certainly part of the fun, but I always find it so fascinating among, cinephiles and film buffs, because sometimes a movie can mean so much to someone that if someone doesn't like it, it's almost like because I've had friends and they almost take it like, well, that means you're rejecting me. And I'm like, no. Yeah. And I understand, because I can get worked up too if someone doesn't, but we're like, it's like we're talking about work here. We're talking about a piece, we don't, we should necessarily be, taking things in a way which is, to be offended by. But I always thought that would be an interesting movie or short film, film buffs who arguing about movies they like or dislike, and how personal people sometimes take rejections of other people's taste and things like that.
I think I'm nicer in real life than in print, in the sense that not that I think of myself as not nice in print, but I just mean I have more courage in print.
Of course.
I'm just going to say what I think, and I don't know who's reading it or whatever. But if someone, I usually don't want to burst someone's bubble, because if you write books and they think, oh, you're a film snob, oh, you don't like that, you're trying to make me feel bad. So I usually try to find something nice to say about something that somebody liked that I didn't.
Right.
But when you're alone at your computer and it's going to be out there, you hope for a while, you just sort of, I'm just going to go for it.
Right. Right. No, I like that about the writing, because, you're right. I mean, it was somewhat provocative to just sort of sometimes just give a dig towards something, but it never felt malicious or maybe a part of your personality that you don't or not necessarily personality, but personality and taste that maybe you wouldn't show someone else, you can put in your work. So I sort of felt that, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
But again, the book. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off.
Let's go on.
I was just going to remind people of the title. Not even nominated. 40 overlooked co-stars of Oscar-winning performances. Where I don't even know if I should ask authors this, because it's so easy to find books. But where is the best place for people to go if they want to get the book?
Well, it's certainly, obviously, Amazon is the easiest, but if people would rather support an independent bookstore, go there. If they don't have it, ask for them to order it. So you said, wherever you get your books is, I guess, the best way to say that.
Great. So, and if people want to follow you on social media or your website, where's the best place for them to go?
The website is JohnDileo.com. I'm on Instagram, john.dileo.12. I have a fan page, an author page rather, on Facebook, and an author page on Amazon. So, I'm easy to find.
Great. Fantastic. And you do a weekly, is it a weekly screening that you do?
It's weekly at certain times of the year, and then it's a little more sporadic. I'm in Milford, Pennsylvania, and we have a historic movie theater. Over 100 years old. So I generally, most Sunday afternoons at 4:00, I introduce a classic movie and then come back at the end for a Q&A. And we try to have monthly themes. Every January we do Hitchcock movies, so I'm in the middle of that right now. And we'll do Oscar movies in February. One's from this book, in fact, including Captain Courageous.
Oh, perfect.
So I'll be the guy introducing the movie, watching it, then getting back on stage for the Q&A in full tears.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone else, too.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope I'm not the only one.
I was really moved by it. I mean, wow, it really got to me. I was like, oh, God, this is killing me. Yeah. Such a good movie. But again, I highly recommend getting the book particularly if you just like film acting and the history of film. It's a must read. And even if you love or hate the Oscars or awards in general, you'll certainly enjoy it. So, John, thanks so much for coming on. It was great to have you. Robert.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, really.
Yeah, it really was. And I hope that you can come back sometime down the road and we'll talk some more.
Great. I love it. Thank you.
Great. And thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/RobertBellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation, or what I call a tip, by clicking the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on that and you can leave a donation if you choose to. Of course, I would greatly appreciate that. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movie logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos. I would also really appreciate if you leave a comment, share the video, like the video. All of these things create traction onto my YouTube channel and really help share the video far and wide, and the channel in general. So thank you so much for doing that, and I will see you all in the next one.